Hello, everyone. Let's have more news about the Warriors, but first, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. The Golden State Warriors, having lacked the size and presence around the rim needed to defeat the super-sized Minnesota Timberwolves, now enter the offseason in search of an addition to their roster who could potentially offset some of these weaknesses. However, in a relatively dry free agent market, veteran center Brook Lopez looks to be the most likely option for the Warriors. Lopez, 37, was still certainly a productive player with the Milwaukee Bucks this season, averaging 13 points, 5 rebounds, and 1.8 assists through 80 games, but his age and lack of mobility also started to wear heavily on his effectiveness throughout the season. While Golden State indeed desperately needs to make a change at the center position in order to avoid relying yet again on the undersized Draymond Green, Lopez is not the ideal option. Yet, as the offseason continues, it is slowly becoming clearer that he might be their only option. Kevin Pelton, in his free agent rankings for ESPN, wrote that Lopez's two current possible fits include the Warriors and the New Orleans Pelicans, while the Pelicans, if they were trying to continue to build around the oft injured Zion Williamson, would need to bring in another piece to complete their front court offensively. Golden State primarily needs a player whose size can help clog up the paint and lift some of the defensive burden off of Green while maintaining offensive productivity. However, the free agent market for big men this offseason is incredibly thin. In Pelton's first four tiers of free agents, there are only three centers: Lopez, Miles Turner, and Al Horford. Now let's go to another video. Don't forget to leave a like.
All right then. Steve Kerr, like all coaches, has coaching pet peeves. And I think Jonathan Kuminga kind of checks all the boxes. Doesn't box out, holds the ball, right? Hand down, man down. And these are certain things where some coaches, maybe it's, okay, that's not a big deal to them. But the stuff that bugs Kerr, Kuminga kind of, tends to do. And so there's that. But let's hear from the man himself first, Steve Kerr, on the TK show about a week ago on Kuminga.
Jonathan, just frustration. It hasn't quite fit. It hasn't quite worked out yet.
I don't look at it that way. All I do is I coach the team every year and try to put the puzzle together the best I can. It's a tricky one because Jonathan obviously is gifted and wants to play a bigger role and wants to play more. And for me, it's like I've been asked to win. And right now, he's not a guy who I can say I'm going to play 38 minutes with the roster that we have, Steph and Jimmy and Draymond, and put the puzzle together that way and expect to win. Doesn't mean he's not a really good player. Doesn't mean he's not talented. It just means the fit. And with the roster that we have, it is tricky. There's no question. And we can talk details. We can talk spacing, usage rate, all that stuff. But the game is about the puzzle fitting. It's about five guys complementing one another at both ends of the floor. All I do is, I try to win, and that that doesn't necessarily mean everybody's going to be happy, whether it's the fans or the players or management, whatever. It's just I got to do what I think is best.
Now, Steve also did several interviews. He did one with Tom Tolbert. He's kind of made the rounds here to start the offseason. And something that someone else pointed out to me, he said, was, JK hasn't been around in the summers, And look, this is something that we've discussed each offseason and throughout all these issues. And Kuminga, he likes his bag work. He has his trainers, his little brother's on deck. He's coming, right? Like he has his stuff that he likes to do. He's not necessarily around the Warriors facility. And you saw that bag work in the Wolves playoff series. You see that it is coming along, but at the same time, it's definitely hurt his fit with the Warriors. Athletic alchemy. You guys know what alchemy is. It's the transfer of energy, right? The theory is energy, it doesn't disappear. You can't get rid of it. You can only transfer it. A lot of you know over the last few months, I've gone through a separation, big life change. And in that, I transferred some of that energy to the wrong place. I started vaping. something I never thought that I would do. But it's one of those habits where it's so easy to create because it's such a convenient one. But I was like, no, that's not who I am and who I want to be. So how do I alchemize that habit? Where do I transfer that energy? And I came across Fume, an award-winning flavored air device. No vaping, no nicotine, just natural flavors. I'll put the unboxing in the video. I got the Journey Pack. Super impressed with the quality of this product. You just stick the flavored pouch in, pop it on, and decide how much airflow you want. But this is a quality product. There's a weight and a balance to this. Because let's be honest, part of the addiction, it's physical. It's an oral fixation. It's something in your hands. It's something to play with, a built-in fidgeter, and something that you can keep on you to transfer that energy. And I can't be more impressed with the quality of the product. And more importantly, it worked. It worked for me, and I think it can work for a lot of you. Over 500,000 people have added Fume to their daily routine, and I get it. It's simple, it's satisfying without any of the downsides of smoking or vaping. So go to tryfume.com/alchemy or use the QR code and use code AthleticAlchemy to get your free Fume topper with your order of your Journey Pack today. And my philosophy has always been when it comes to training basketball players is the more physically gifted you are, the simpler you should keep it. The old Bruce Lee saying, I fear the man that practices one kick 1,000 times, not a man that practices 1,000 kicks one time. And so for Kuminga, to me, it's just the triple threat. There's so much nuance, and you see it with Jimmy. There's so much nuance and art to the triple threat game, as well as his pickup. The pickup, that's one of the more underrated skills, micro skills in basketball. You can have the moves, you can have the bag, but your pickup has to be clean and efficient. And you have to really focus in on the hand placement of where you pick up the ball, off contact, off the move. And then of course, ball handling. I don't mean moves. I don't mean between the leg, hang, cry. I mean actually ball handling, like the security of ball handling, where the ball rolls over and you've got control of the ball for more time than pitter-pattering on the ball. But yeah, man, Steve, listen, I think he was transparent. He was honest. And what he certainly didn't do was say, oh, we need Jonathan back. We need Kuminga back. Because he has done that in the past with certain players. Like, let's be honest. There's been times where we hit a off season and Kerr's like, no, we need that guy back. Like, and there's that endorsement. And he's being honest, talking about the fit. And, he needs the ball. And at this point, he's the third guy. And then he doesn't do the little things, the pet peeves that I have as a coach. Now I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm paraphrasing or just kind of interpreting, what Kerr's saying. And then you kept hearing him say puzzle. It's my job to put the puzzle together and puzzle this, puzzle that. Let's listen to Draymond on Kuminga on his podcast.
You're going to have to evaluate Jonathan Kuminga, right? Like, we all know his talent. We all know what we all believe he could be. But now you have to make a huge financial commitment. Like, it won't be JK at whatever his number is now. Like, it's a huge financial. So that has to look different for everybody, right? That has to look different for JK. First and foremost, he's the athlete, right? Like, he's the one that got to do the work. He the one that got to sign the contract. So it has to look different for him first and foremost, right? From an organizational standpoint. All of that stuff has to come together. And I love JK's answer in this press conference. He said, listen, we all got to sit down. We got to figure it out. It's going to take a while to figure it out. Free agency does take a while. It's going to take a while to figure this out. He said, but I appreciate Coach Kerr because he's helped me get here where I am at. And man, that was such a responsible, great, well-thought answer. Because it's true.
Professional answer.
Because it's true. Like, has it always gone the way you want it to go? No. But that's probably with 99% of basketball players in the NBA. If you talk to a guy, most guys are going to tell you, I could do more of this. They don't let me. Like, that's just the nature of what we do, right? So we all have our trials and tribulations, our peaks and our valleys. right? His valley was more on Front Street for everybody. Yes, but we all have our peaks and our valleys. And the reality is what he said is correct. I love the way he handled it. One thing's for certain. I said this in my ex interview. Whether it's here or somewhere else, he gonna get paid and he gonna have a very bright future. So I don't think he has anything to worry about. Everybody know what he's capable of. He will get paid here or he will get paid somewhere else.
Let's be honest here. When we're talking about puzzle pieces to this Warriors system, Draymond is the least dynamic puzzle piece. I know a lot of people caught feelings when I suggested that Steph was part of the reason why Kuminga's not playing. I still stand by that take as far as not the reason, but again, reading between the lines, clearly Steph wasn't like endorsing Kuminga to be out there for 30 minutes. Otherwise, he would have been. That was my point. But again, Draymond really kind of straps the different lineups because he is this unique piece that needs unique pieces around him. And, Draymond, he's no fool. It's like if they were to commit to Kuminga long term, what does that mean for him long term? He's up for another extension. And so Draymond's going to say what he says. It wasn't nothing foul about it. But again, the puzzle pieces and Draymond, he's like a corner puzzle piece. Like he can only fit one way, it seems as though at this point. But we also understand that, he's needed. You got four of them things, then you're going to yield to that puzzle piece. And so you see the thumbnail. The writing seems to be on the wall from both sides of things. They're both all saying the right thing. Again, I don't think anything's been out of pocket, but you can again read between the lines of what's being said. And it seems as though, whether it's a sign and trade or a sign and trade later, that's what seems like is going to happen here with this Kuminga situation. And it's probably best for all parties involved, right? Let's talk realistic sign and trades here. I had spoken last week the fact that the Warriors can only take back half of Kuminga's outgoing contract. So that straps things. They have to get more creative. And the reality is there are only a couple of teams with any type of cap flexibility at this point. So everyone's going to have to get creative. But I'm going to throw out a couple of realistic sign and trade moves. We'll talk the big fish, the big other moves in another time, but let's talk realistically. In the first spot, I think you know where I'm going to start. It's the Brooklyn Nets, right? And a guy that has been thrown around here for a long time in Cam Johnson, 29 years old. And I think the reason why he's been thrown around so much is he would be a seamless fit. He's a 40% three-point shooter. He's a great cutter off the ball. He rebounds reasonably well. He plays bigger. They list him at like 6'7", 6'8". It feels, maybe it's the hair. Feels like he plays a bit bigger, right? And I think it would just be a seamless fit into the Warriors system as far as a bigger wing forward player that shoots the ball. He can shoot it off movement. He cuts well. He's a system player, solid team defender. The knock would be he only really averages about 50 games per year. He hasn't been the most durable of players. And that was one of the reasons he slid to the Suns. Was he just out of the lottery? I think it was like 13th or 14th the year he came out of North Carolina. He was an older draft pick, and he had been flagged for back issues and just durability issues. And, I wouldn't call him injury prone, but again, if you look at his seasons, about 50 a year, that's not great, right? But, I think that we all understand that Brooklyn is a team that has, Kuminga has New Jersey ties. I know they're in Brooklyn, right? But he has ties to that area. He went to high school out there, and it kind of makes sense. And Cam Johnson absolutely makes sense for where the Warriors are at right now. And what that deal would look like, again, because of the take back money and all this, it would be Cam Johnson, Kuminga at $35 million per. That seems a bit rich. I don't know if Brooklyn, again, they have the money. And, they've done things like this in the past where you're like, oh, that's kind of aggressive, right? But it would be JK at 35 as well as Trace Jackson would, I believe, make it feasible to hit a sign and trade this summer. And it wouldn't have to be at the deadline once Kuminga was on the contract and played again for the Warriors. They also have Nick Claxton, their center, 6'10", 11-ish. He's actually making more than Cam Johnson. And so that one would be more like Kuminga at 30, as well as Moses Moody. Nick Claxton for Kuminga and Moses Moody. I would try to get one of their like 4 first-round picks back in that one. Because Nick Claxton, look, he can run the floor, right? He is mobile enough in pick and roll coverage where he's not a big that like gets picked on tremendously. He can move his feet, right? And he is a legit rim protector. He's got good hands. Like he's a lob threat, a vertical spacer, but he doesn't shoot the 3, okay? 50% from the foul line. That's always an issue for that style of player who you want as a vertical spacer. And then I don't know how many Nets games you've watched over the last few years. Bro he's right behind Draymond as far as blowing a gasket and getting thrown out of a game. And he's temperamental, seems to be kind of immature or just kind of lacking emotional control during games. Like he gets tossed like once a month for just like a hard foul and like cussing everybody out and walks out of there. And so I don't know if he can be trusted to be reliable in big spots, even though he fits the bill as a mobile kind of modern big. And so the Nick Claxton thing, I'm a little wary of, and I'd want a first round pick back in that deal, especially if you're sending Moses to make the money work, right? But Brooklyn, I think we all understand you circle is the team that is probably, I don't know if there's odds out on it. They put odds out on everything these days, right? But the odds would be probably the highest if a sign and trade were to be worked out this summer. It would be with the Brooklyn Nets. The other team that has some cap money and flexibility is the Detroit Pistons. Coming off a really successful year, even though they didn't get it, it feels like they could have got out of that first round, right? It was such a classic young team, coulda, shoulda, woulda, but didn't in that first round. But a very successful year back into relevance for the Pistons. They formed an identity of being rough, rugged. Cade is who we thought he was going to be, right? Now, I'm going to throw this one out here, and I know some of you are probably going to throw up a little bit in your mouth. What about Tobias Harris, Kuminga sign and trade? Hear me out. Let me tell you about it. So Tobias is 33 years old, right? And it would be Kuminga and Moses, from my understanding financially. Again, don't hold me to the fire with these numbers. It's very complicated, but I've sat down and made sure that this seems realistic, okay? Kuminga and Moses for Tobias Harris and a draft pick, a future first-round pick. And listen, he would fit in. He would do the things that he was asked to do, right? He's a big body. He rebounds better than Kuminga, right? And he's a career 35% three-point shooter, better team defender. And, you know, the reality is, like, if Tobias Harris is your 4th guy, you've got Steph, Draymond, Jimmy, and then Tobias Harris. He's been in a lot of big games. Again, not ideal, not sexy. I get it. But the other thing would be you'd be coming off a lot of salary. It would open up a lot of flexibility for the Warriors moving forward where, okay, you have this upcoming season with Tobias who makes sense and fits, right? No one's thrilled about the potential of it or anything like that, but it fits. And then his number comes off. And in the same breath, you're not paying Kuminga 30 plus mil for 4 or 5 years, and Moses's contract comes off. Now, whether you view that as a positive or not, maybe, and you get a future first round pick. So you get Tobias for a year to run this thing back with vets, and then you open up cap flexibility as well as getting another future first round pick to wheel and deal. And if you're the Detroit Pistons, you know, you're building. Kuminga kind of fits, I think, both of them, Kuminga and Moses, just that rugged physicality. They're going to buy into that. Moses is reunited with his high school teammate in Cade Cunningham. And I think it makes sense for both sides. Again, not a sexy option, but something that I think is something to consider. The Chicago Bulls, they, you know, don't have as much cap space, but potentially could, because they're sitting there in the same spot we are with Josh Giddey, the man that was taken 1 pick before Kuminga in that 21 draft. And he had somewhat of a coming out party towards the end of the year, right? And people imagine that Kuminga and Giddey probably are going to set the market for each other. I don't know what deal gets done first, but you imagine their contracts are probably going to be the same contract. So Kuminga for Giddey straight up, right? Giddey is so much more of a Kerr type of player, right? We talk about the pet peeves. He does all the things that are on the other end of the spectrum that Kerr loves: pushing the ball, rebounding, hustle, like all that stuff, right? But the reality is, if you were to do a Giddey for Kuminga straight up deal, it still doesn't. When you talk about the puzzle pieces, they don't fit any better than it doesn't fit any better than Kuminga does with Jimmy and Draymond in the front court, Giddey, right? So that doesn't really make sense. Kobe White has been a name that has been thrown out there. I think it started with Marcus Thompson on the plus minus. Shout out to M2. Kobe is a bucket. He's been a bucket since North Carolina. Here's the thing I think that maybe Dub Nation doesn't quite realize is Chicago, their fans, the Bulls, they love Kobe White. Like, I don't think they're just like, hey, yeah, okay. Like, I'm not, building around him is strong. But what I would say is, if they're going to pay Giddey, right? Now you're going to pay Kuminga, who doesn't really fit with Giddey, and not pay Kobe, who does fit with Giddey much better. So I think that that's kind of unrealistic. I don't think we're gauging exactly how much the Bulls value Kobe White, and I don't know how realistic that is. But I'll give you a name that I think is Lonzo Ball. Lonzo Ball, the forgotten man, played like 20 games or so last year, finally came back, and he looked good. He sprained his wrist and was out for their play-in run, right? But it wasn't the knee. It wasn't the knee. The knee didn't flare up. He looked good in the games that he played, and he is on a super reasonable contract, $10 million per for the next 2 seasons. What if you sent them Kuminga in a sign and trade? And maybe Kuminga's, again, we don't know that. The other thing that's difficult about these sign and trades market value, does Kuminga only get like 20 something per? I know the initial projection was 30 something per, but I don't know. I don't know what the market will be. But then again, so we can only take back half of what he gets paid. So if it's 20 something per, the Lonzo contract actually works. Would you send Kuminga in a sign and trade to Chicago for Lonzo Ball and the 12th pick? We need the pick because Lonzo hasn't proven he can stay healthy at all, right? It's a huge gamble bringing him in, even though on paper, you want to talk about an ideal Warrior player for Steve Kerr and pet peeves. Pushes the ball, one of a top 5 passer in the league, rebounds, point of attack defender. The 3 ball has come along since he's been in Chicago, right? And then the contract is small. It's not a huge gamble. And so I know a lot of people were fixated on Kobe White. I don't know how realistic that is, but I think Lonzo Ball is a much more realistic target and frankly, a gamble that's worth taking when you consider the system fit at that price. And if you can get a pick, that's the one I kind of like. Lonzo Ball, Kuminga sign and trade, get a 1st round pick, and he fits perfectly into what we're trying to do. Now, he's not a big, but I like that one. I got one more of these. We'll call these the non-sexy sign and trades. And again, we'll go over, Jaren Jackson Jr., Sabonis, like the star, the tier above names, and what that may look like and the possibilities of that, because there's going to be a lot of those guys out there too, right? There's going to be a lot of guys out there too. But I got one more name that I don't think many of you have considered. Santi Aldama, 7 foot, 24-year-old Memphis Grizzlies. When I say his name, I know y'all know who he is, but you probably didn't consider it. He is a restricted free agent as well. And
the Golden State Warriors should call about acquiring a late lottery pick in the 2025 NBA draft to use in a 3-team trade to land Cameron Johnson. The Nets are shopping the 6'8" forward, subscription required, to try to move up or land a second lottery selection. Brooklyn has the 8th overall pick, and fans know the 10th, 13th, and 14th selections are likely available at the right price. The Warriors should try to work out a 3-team deal. The 6'8" forward is a plug-and-play option for the Dubs. He is a career 39.2% three-point shooter over 2,014 attempts, with the size and versatility to guard multiple positions. Johnson helped the Suns reach the NBA Finals in 2021 and is in the middle of his prime. He can score 18 every night or settle into a lesser role as a 3-and-D forward. It is whatever his team needs to win. The Dubs still have a scoring issue, and need more size, they had nowhere to turn against the Timberwolves, especially when Stephen Curry was injured. Johnson provides offensive firepower and lineup versatility, which is why Golden State should already be working the phones. Johnson is a better version of Jonathan Kuminga for the Warriors. He offers floor spacing and playmaking upgrades at the same size. The 29-year-old would allow Golden State to go small with Draymond Green at the 5 and still have enough shooting. Nobody is leaving Stephen Curry, but Johnson is another plus shooter that teams will have to track. That opens the lane for Jimmy Butler to attack and get easy buckets. The Warriors only have the 41st overall pick in the 2025 draft, so they are not trading up without significant assets included. It would be time to deal Moses Moody and salary filler to get Johnson. They would need a team with a lottery pick as the third in this deal. And you, fan, what do you think about Cameron Johnson's situation? Leave your opinion in the comments.